Canada has what the world needs. We're becoming an energy superpower. And
the U.S. is harming themselves with these tariffs. Okay? It takes some time for that to filter through, just like it took some time for the impacts of Brexit to filter through.
In a significant and highly strategic escalation of ongoing trade tensions, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that dramatically raises the tariff rate on a specific and particularly vulnerable group of Canadian goods to a punitive and economically severe 35%. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. This new tariff, which became effective at 12:01 a.m. on Friday, August 1st, 2025, represents a sharp and intentional increase from a 25% rate that had been in place since March. The White House has cited Canada's alleged failure to cooperate on efforts to curb the flow of illicit drugs, particularly fentanyl, as the justification for the measure. This action has elicited a swift, critical, and profoundly disappointed response from Canadian officials, who have rejected the U.S. justification and expressed deep concern over the move's potential for economic harm. Canada's Prime Minister has stated that Ottawa will work to protect Canadian jobs and diversify export markets in response. While the headline figure of 35% might, at first glance, suggest a broad-based economic assault on the entire Canadian economy, a deeper analysis reveals its true nature, a highly targeted and precision-guided measure. Its primary aim is to exert maximum pressure on the small, but economically significant fraction of Canadian exports, estimated at roughly 5% of the total, that are not explicitly protected by the foundational Canada-US-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA. This targeted approach underscores a deliberate strategy to inflict pain on specific industries and businesses without completely disrupting the broader, deeply integrated North American supply chains that are critical to both economies. It represents a form of economic warfare waged on a micro level, designed to achieve political objectives by targeting the most exposed elements of the opposing country's economy. The foundational strength of CUSMA, a bulwark against broader economic conflict. The overwhelming majority of commercial activity and trade between Canada and the United States continues to be insulated from these new tariffs, thanks to the robust and comprehensive framework of CUSMA. This agreement, which serves as a modernization and successor to the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, acts as a formidable bulwark, ensuring that the vast majority of goods can continue to cross the border without being subjected to these punitive duties. According to a recent and authoritative analysis published by the Bank of Canada, an impressive 95% of all Canadian exports destined for the U.S. successfully meet the stringent criteria outlined within CUSMA, thereby securing their tariff-free status. This critical and widespread exemption is what maintains the stability and predictability of the deeply integrated North American supply chain, a complex and codependent network that has been meticulously built and refined over decades. This is the reason why the general public may not immediately feel the effects of the new tariffs, as the majority of everyday goods remain unaffected. However, the remaining 5% of exports, which are now facing this crippling 35% tariff, represent a collection of companies and industries that are now in an exceptionally precarious and vulnerable position. The economic impact of this tariff is not an evenly distributed burden across the Canadian economy. Instead, it is highly concentrated on small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, that often lack the significant financial resources, the immense economies of scale, and the logistical flexibility of their much larger, multinational corporate counterparts. For these businesses, the jump from a 25% to a 35% tariff is far more than a simple increase in an operating expense. It is a potentially fatal blow to their profitability, their competitive standing, and their very long-term viability in the United States market. This dramatic tariff increase is effectively pushing many of these smaller firms toward a financial point of no return, a threshold where continuing to export becomes an economically irrational and unsustainable business decision. It forces them to either exit the market or make drastic, often unfeasible, changes to their operations. The Byzantine world of CUSMA's rules of origin. The fundamental and most significant challenge for these non-compliant businesses lies in the rules of origin that are at the very heart of the CUSMA agreement. These regulations are not a simple customs formality. They are meticulously crafted to ensure that a product has a sufficient amount of North American content and value-added processing to be granted preferential, tariff-free access. The compliance process is not a simple checkbox exercise. Rather, it is a complex, often lengthy, and costly product-by-product analysis that places the entire burden of proof squarely on the shoulders of the exporting company. This requires a detailed and exhaustive audit of every component, every raw material, and every stage of the manufacturing process to confirm that it meets the precise CUSMA standards. To illustrate the sheer complexity of this process, consider the stark contrast between two very different types of products. A cut of premium Alberta beef, for instance, sourced from a cow that was born, raised, and processed entirely within the borders of Canada, is a clear and unambiguous example of a CUSMA-compliant product. Its origin is straightforward, easily verifiable, and requires minimal documentation. In sharp contrast, a seemingly simple manufactured item like a screwdriver presents a far more difficult and challenging case. The metal for the shaft could be sourced from a foundry in a country like Brazil. The plastic or rubber for the handle could be manufactured in a facility in Vietnam, and the various screws and fasteners could be imported from a factory in Taiwan. For this product to be considered CUSMA compliant, a specific and often very high percentage of its value, frequently as high as 60%, must be demonstrably derived from materials or labor originating within Canada, the U.S., or Mexico. Furthermore, the product must undergo a substantial transformation within one of these three countries to be deemed eligible. This is precisely where industries with intricate and globally dispersed supply chains, such as electronics, complex machinery, and many automotive parts, encounter significant difficulty. A significant portion of their essential components are often sourced from outside the North American trade bloc, making compliance nearly impossible without a costly overhaul. According to Daniel Kizelbach, a managing partner at the prominent law firm Miller Thompson LLP, the financial implications of this are nothing short of staggering. He points out that a 35% tariff can easily and completely surpass a company's entire pre-tax profit margin on a given product. This means, in practical terms, that with every single unit they successfully export, these businesses would be losing money, a situation that is economically untenable and completely unsustainable in any business model. The only viable alternatives for these companies are to either pass the full tariff cost onto their U.S. consumers, thereby risking the immediate loss of crucial market share to competitors, or to attempt to absorb the entire loss themselves, a strategy that is commercially suicidal in the long run. The new, elevated tariff effectively creates a powerful non-tariff barrier that serves to shut these businesses out of the lucrative American market, regardless of the quality or competitiveness of their products. The administrative and economic trap for SMEs, a vicious and unavoidable cycle. The CUSMA certification process itself is a significant and often insurmountable obstacle for small and medium-sized businesses. It is not just the inherent complexity of the rules, but also the considerable administrative and financial costs involved in proving compliance. As trade consultant Eric Miller of the Rideau Potomac Strategy Group insightfully notes, the CUSMA rules can be so convoluted and opaque that they appear as a form of cryptography to companies that do not have dedicated and specialized legal and compliance teams.